Hey you, ready for a trending quick?
Always.
Today we're looking at a case that's got everyone talking.
Yeah, this one's pretty wild.
The murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. This story, it goes way beyond just a simple crime.
What's so fascinating about it is it's ignited this huge debate about healthcare and corporate power and whether public outrage can ever justify taking a life.
It's heavy stuff. We're talking state and federal charges. A suspect with a plan, it's chilling how meticulous it was, and the public reaction, it's divided the entire nation.
Yeah, it really forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about society and the systems we live under.
Exactly. So let's get into it. December 4th, Brian Thompson, he was 50 years old, CEO of UnitedHealthcare, father of two, tragically shot outside a Manhattan hotel.
On his way to, would you believe it, an investor conference, a
Yeah.
detail that becomes very important later on.
It's crazy.
The suspect, 26-year-old Luigi Mangione, caught on surveillance footage fleeing the scene. His escape route, a meticulously planned maze through New York City, leading authorities all the way to Pennsylvania.
It's like straight out of a movie, right?
Wow.
Central Park, hails a cab, takes the subway, boards a train. You think with all that planning, he'd have a better getaway strategy.
And yet, he was ultimately apprehended at, wait for it, a McDonald's. In Altoona, Pennsylvania, a customer recognized him from news reports.
Talk about ironic, right? You never think those most wanted posters actually work. But the real shock came with what the police found on him.
A homemade ghost gun, untraceable, deadly, along with fake IDs, and $10,000 in cash. This level of preparation really says something about the premeditation.
And if that wasn't unsettling enough, there were words like delay, deny, and depose scrawled on the ammunition. It's like it paints a picture of someone with this deep-seated anger, almost a vendetta.
Another layer to this chilling narrative, Mangini had a notebook filled with rants against the health insurance industry and wealthy executives. He specifically mentioned targeting insurance CEOs at conferences, which makes Thompson's death seem less like a random act and more like a calculated execution.
So we have a young man, an Ivy League graduate from a wealthy family, seemingly targeting this high-powered CEO. What could possibly drive someone to such extremes?
Right. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We know Mangini had undergone spinal surgery, was reportedly in severe pain before the incident. Former classmates describe him kind of withdrawing from social life, disappearing from online communities. His family even filed a missing person report. Was this like a descent into mental illness, or was there something more insidious at play?
And then there's his online activity. His Goodreads account shows that he recently read and praised Ted Kaczynski's manifesto, The Unabomber. That's not exactly light reading for your average Ivy League grad.
It's disturbing, to say the least. While it's crucial not to jump to conclusions, the parallels are hard to ignore. You have these brilliant individuals who, for different reasons, develop a deep-seated resentment towards systems they perceive as corrupt.
Right, and what makes this case even more complex is the healthcare angle.
Absolutely. Police found these handwritten notes from Mangini where he called health insurance companies parasitic. And here's where it gets interesting. Some people are actually sympathizing with Mangini. They see him as this vigilante striking back at a broken system.
Wow.
It really underscores the deep frustration that so many Americans feel about healthcare costs and the difficulties they face in accessing care. Even Senator Bernie Sanders has weighed in, linking the case to this simmering public anger.
It makes you think, where do you stand on this? Can you understand that level of rage, even if you don't condone the violence?
It's a tough question. This case has become this lightning rod for a much larger discussion. Individual responsibility versus systemic failures. And where do we as a society draw the line between acceptable dissent and criminal action?
And then there's the legal battle, almost as complicated as Mangini's escape route. His lawyer, completely blindsided by the double charges, state and federal. It's a very unusual move, legally.
Incredibly rare to see charges filed at both levels for the same crime. She's planning to use a double jeopardy argument, essentially that you can't be tried twice for the same crime. However,
Hold on, but doesn't that only apply if you're tried twice in the same jurisdiction? Not different ones, like state versus federal court.
that's where it gets tricky. The dual sovereignty doctrine allows for separate prosecutions by state and federal governments because they're considered distinct legal entities.
So basically, even though it's the same crime, they can technically prosecute him twice because it's under different sets of laws.
Essentially. But the defense will likely argue that the charges, while filed under separate statutes, essentially covered the same offense. It's going to be a fascinating legal battle to watch. And of course, looming over all of this is the death penalty, a very real possibility in the federal case. That raises the stakes for Mangione, adds a whole other level of complexity.
It's a serious reminder of just how serious these charges are, the consequences he's facing. But even if the legal arguments are clear-cut, there's another thing that could mess things up: the jury. Legal experts are really worried about jury nullification in this case.
Right. Jury nullification, that's when a jury decides not to convict, even if they think the person's guilty, often because they don't agree with the law or sympathize with the defendant's motives.
So they're worried jurors might just ignore the evidence
Yeah,
because they feel Mangione was justified, even if he broke the law.
exactly. They might feel the healthcare system is just so broken, so unjust, that they side with his anger, even his violent act. We saw some of that in the Trump hush money trial. Potential jurors dismissed left and right because of their strong opinions.
It's kind of unsettling, that the justice system, it's supposed to be based on facts and law, not on personal feelings.
It shows the challenge for both the prosecution and the defense. Finding an impartial jury when the case has become so politically and emotionally charged, it's like navigating a minefield.
Right. You need jurors who can set their personal opinions aside, whatever those are, and just focus on the evidence and the law. Is that even possible in a case like this, with emotions so high?
It's a tall order, but it's the foundation of a fair trial. But beyond all the legal stuff, this case has started a much bigger conversation. Mental health, healthcare inequality, the power of corporations. It's like this event just exposed all these raw nerves in our society.
Yeah, like we've opened this Pandora's box of societal issues. And the fact that some people are actually praising Mangione, calling him some kind of, I don't know, twisted folk hero, it's baffling.
It's a disturbing trend. It shows the dangers of echo chambers, especially online. Social media, it can amplify extreme viewpoints and create these distorted realities where violence is seen as an okay response to systemic problems.
It's like a reminder that we need to find better ways, healthier ways, to deal with these issues, to give people hope that change is possible without resorting to such extreme measures.
Right. Violence is never the answer. It just leads to more pain, more suffering. In this case, it cost a man his life, left countless others dealing with the consequences.
A real tragedy. But going back to Mangione's story, his writings, the part where he calls health insurance companies parasitic, did he actually have personal experience with healthcare struggles? That could have fueled that anger. Or was it more of a philosophical thing?
That's a piece of the puzzle we're still figuring out. There are those reports about the spinal surgery, and some people think maybe he had trouble with insurance coverage or had huge medical bills.
That would definitely explain some of his anger. Imagine feeling trapped in a system that's supposed to help you, but just ends up causing more pain, physically and financially. It's just heartbreaking.
Absolutely. If that's true, it makes his story even more tragic. Like he was lashing out at a system that failed him personally. Investigators are probably looking into his medical history, finances, anything he said to insurance companies.
Like they're trying to put together a broken mind, right? Understand what brought him to this point. What were the breaking points? It's a dark journey, but fascinating, into the human mind. And it could be the key to understanding his motives.
Exactly. And as we learn more, it'll be really interesting to see how it affects the legal proceedings and how it shapes public opinion.
With all this talk, it's easy to forget the victims. Brian Thompson, his family, colleagues, they're the ones truly suffering because of what Mangione did. We can't lose sight of that human cost.
You're right. Among all the legal arguments and debates, there are real people whose lives have been changed forever. Thompson, he was a husband, a father, a leader. His loss, it leaves a hole that can't be filled.
It's like this harsh reminder that actions have consequences. Violence, whatever the reason, it leaves a trail of destruction. We need to remember that even as we try to understand the bigger issues that might have played a role.
It shows the need for empathy, compassion, even when we're struggling with these difficult issues.
Empathy is key. It helps us see past the headlines, the legal arguments, and recognize the human beings at the heart of this story. But there's another part we haven't really touched on yet: the impact on the healthcare industry itself.
Good point. This case has sent shockwaves through the corporate world, especially among those health insurance companies.
I can imagine. It must be unnerving for CEOs and executives, knowing they could be targeted just because of their job, their industry.
There's definitely more anxiety now, increased security for people and for events. This heightened vigilance, it'll probably last a while.
Sad but true these days. But will this case lead to any real changes in healthcare? Will it force these companies to look at their flaws and address people's concerns?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Some people think this will be a wake-up call, forcing the industry to see the human consequences of what they do.
Right. It's a reminder that they're not just dealing with numbers, but with real lives, people's health, their well-being.
Exactly. If they don't listen, they risk pushing the public away even more, fueling more anger and resentment.
Which could lead to more violence, more tragedies, a vicious cycle.
To break that cycle, we need a whole new perspective. We need to see healthcare as putting people first, not just profits.
Finding the right balance, right? The needs of businesses versus the needs of people. Right now, it feels like the balance is way off.
It does. To find that balance, we need open conversations, collaboration, and compromise. It's not easy, but it's essential if we want a healthcare system that's fair and just.
And a safer society for everyone. Nobody should have to live in fear of losing their insurance or being targeted because of their job.
You're right. This case shows us we need to deal with the root causes of inequality and injustice. Build a society where everyone feels valued, heard, and safe.
That's a big goal, but worth striving for. A society that doesn't care for its most vulnerable is a society that's failing.
Well said. And this case, as tragic as it is, gives us a chance to reflect, examine our values, our systems, and work towards a better future.
A future where healthcare is a right, not a privilege. Where corporate greed doesn't win over human needs. Where violence is never the answer.
That's what we should all be aiming for. And it is possible if we're brave enough to face these challenges. But let's shift gears a bit. This case makes you wonder about the young people watching all this. What kind of message are they getting?
That's been on my mind too. It's definitely a mixed message. On one hand, it's a warning. Don't let anger and despair take over. It shows what can happen when you go down a dark path and lose your humanity.
Exactly. But it's also a call to action. Young people have a lot of power to shape the future, to build a world that's more just, more caring.
It's about channeling that frustration and idealism into positive change, creating a better tomorrow.
Right. They can be the voices of reason, the ones fighting for justice, building a society that puts human dignity first.
And they can do it without violence. They can use their voices, their votes, their creativity to make a difference. They can be the generation that breaks the cycle of hatred and despair.
That's the message we need to give them, that their voices matter, their actions matter, they have the power to change the world.
A message of hope in all this darkness. And it's a message we all need to hear.
Absolutely. Hope is what keeps us going, what drives us to make things better. And when things are tough, it's even more important to hold on to that hope.
And remember that even in the darkest times, there's always a chance for light, for healing, for change. But let's get back to the legal challenges. One of the biggest hurdles will be finding that impartial jury, one that can deal with all the emotions this case stirs up.
Right. How do you find jurors who can separate their own feelings about healthcare, which are strong for a lot of people, from the facts of this crime? That's going to be tough for both sides.
Oh, it's going to be a meticulous process, that's for sure. Jury selection, or voir dire as it's called, super important in this case. Both sides, the prosecution and the defense, they get to question potential jurors, really dig deep.
I bet it's a delicate balance, right? They need to find out if someone's biased, but without, influencing them or messing up the whole jury pool. Exactly. They're looking for people who can come in with an open mind, listen to the evidence, apply the law, regardless of their own feelings about healthcare or even, wealth disparities.
Makes you wonder, what kinds of questions will they ask?
Oh, they'll definitely get into it. People's experiences with healthcare, their views on corporations, on violence, vigilantism. It's tricky trying to spot biases without pushing the jury one way or another.
Sounds super complex. They need people who are informed enough to understand the case, but not so set in their opinions that they can't be objective.
Exactly. It's a tough balance. That's why jury selection is often considered, the most crucial part of a trial, especially in cases like this that are so high profile.
And this one definitely is. It's got it all right. Shocking crime, mysterious suspect, all these social and political issues tied in. No wonder everyone's so captivated.
And it's a story that's going to keep going for months, maybe years. As the legal process plays out, we'll be watching how they present their arguments, how the evidence is weighed, what the jury ultimately decides.
It reminds you that justice, it can be slow, but it does happen. And in the end, we all want the truth to come out right. And for justice to be served.
That's what we hope for. And while we don't know how the trial will end, one thing's for sure. This case has started a national conversation, and it's not going away anytime soon.
It's forced us to look at some uncomfortable things. Our healthcare system, the power of corporations, the limits of free speech. It's made us think hard about anger and violence in our society.
And that might be the most important thing that comes out of this. It's made us ask some tough questions. How do we make healthcare fair and just? How do we hold corporations accountable without resorting to violence? How do we balance individual rights with keeping people safe?
Those are questions we all need to wrestle with. And finding the answers, well, won't be easy. But we can't ignore them. Not if we want to stop something like this from happening again.
Absolutely. This case, it's a wake-up call. We can't just brush these issues aside. We have to address the roots of anger, despair, and ultimately violence. We need to create a society where everyone feels valued, heard, safe.
A society where justice wins, not just in the courtroom, but everywhere.
Well said. And that's what I hope people take away from this. This case, as awful as it is, it's a chance to grow, to reflect. It's a chance to learn, to change, to work towards a better future.
A future where violence is never the answer, where justice and compassion are what guide us.
Beautifully put. So as we wrap up this trending quick, one last thought. What if Mangione had targeted a different CEO? Someone not so directly connected to an industry that people feel so strongly about? Would it have gotten the same attention? Would people be so supportive? It really makes you think about our own biases, how we define justice.
It's a chilling thought, but important. It forces us to look at ourselves, our values, what we believe. And that kind of self-reflection, that's what can lead to real change.
So keep thinking, keep questioning, keep working to make the world better. That's the real legacy we can all create from this tragedy.
Thanks for joining us for this Trending Quick on the Luigi Mangione case. We've gone through the details of the crime, explored what might have motivated the suspect, and talked about the bigger issues at play.
It's been quite a journey, fascinating and unsettling. But hopefully, by looking at all these complexities, we've given you some insights and made you want to talk about these important issues.
Like we often find, this case brings up more questions than answers. But that's part of what makes this so interesting, right? Getting into the details, the gray areas, the things that challenge us and make us think.
We hope you'll keep thinking about what we've discussed even after the show's over. Talk to your friends, family, colleagues. Have those conversations respectfully. And most importantly, use your voice, your actions to make a positive difference.
Because in the end, it's not just about the verdict in this one case. It's about all of us working together to build a world that's more just, more compassionate for everyone.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this Trending Quick. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the conversation going.